Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to the LL3 podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Tuesday, January 7th, 2020. Yes, so mainly I'm going to be talking about a couple of articles pertaining to what's going on with the tension between the United States and Iran. They're saying in multiple reports that Iran attacked a base in Iraq with U.S. troops. So it's a reference to what happened with their top commander, who was, I think it's Milalasi, I think it's called. Milalasi. I could maybe mispronouncing it. So forgive me on that. But pertaining to what happened at, Baghdad airport. So I'd be here try to address both sides on this, because it is important to know. We have to look at everything and how all this came about. And I'll add something else to that as well. And I'll address that before the end of the show. The question I always have for the folks out there: Kio bono, who benefits? If you study history with the banksters, they've been financing wars recorded since 1741. Many people claim the American Revolution was funded by both sides. Same thing with the war between the United States and the Confederate States of America, and everything else in between and beyond. Can this be the same thing? Don't be surprised, because they want the military-industrial complex to enhance the stocks on oil, other commodities, jack it up. In reality, both sides of the paradigm to this matter don't want to see a war. But you got political bobbleheads try to make it that way. Like they're wicked and vice versa. Foreign policy has always been a flawed issue with the United States for a very long time. On the other hand, too, their government in Iran isn't lovey-dovey. Doesn't mean the people from both sides are wicked as well. The citizens, the residents, rank and file. This is what the one world order wants. They want a third world conflict. One of their main goals is to make sure 90% of the people be wiped off the map, one way or the other, according with the Georgia Guidestones. There's interesting, great, beautiful natural resources in Persia as well. If I'm correct, I could be mistaken, hopefully I'm not. Zbigniew Brzezinski wanted Iran, have the United States control that country, because it's part of the Eurasian region. There's one big grand chessboard, what we're seeing. Donald Trump chose poorly. President Trump. But remember this, folks. He's just a patsy. Just like with Barack Obama on Libya, etc. Deep state, hidden hand, the order, New World Order, whatever you want to call it, globalist elites, want this to be a reality. Want to fulfill the War of the Dogma, I believe it's called, by Albert Pike, about the Third World War with the Christians fighting the Muslims. Very Orwellian indeed. Maybe we could say, too, based on what Mike Adams talked about yesterday, the battlefield will be in the United States as well. A la sleeper cells. Hopefully that won't be the case, because innocent people, regardless of what background or faith, will suffer from it. The world is awakening. Mainstream garbage media ratings are going down the tubes. Slowly. Majority, people say a bunch of sheeple. I look at it this way. You're going to have doubtful Thomases of the world. To pick a side, with us or with the terrorist. All the propagandized rhetoric. Which is one big illusion. Have to pay attention a lot more thoroughly. The people who heard my shows in the past understand what I'm addressing. And I'll say this again: the two biggest blunders the New World Order made in the new millennium: September 11th and the murder of William Cooper. That's why we have to question everything, my friends. We shouldn't be deploying our troops to that region. We should all bring them home. The war of Iraq was unconstitutional. Period. A lot of these individuals, elected servants, should be impeached or expelled with due process. But you got too many maggots in the district of criminals trying to dictate to all of us or facilitate how we should think. I say to hell with them. Those neocons, you should throw their asses in the front line and see how tough they really are, regardless of party. Of course, I talked about all these people rallying, protesting, and call it grassroots. I disagree. It's convenient. Because they didn't do that when Libya was attacked. Okay? No big rallies over it. So those particular movements are synthetic. Show and tell. All in good faith. I'm not saying everyone that's involved are bad, but they're being misled. So, I'll be doing a couple of articles pertaining to it, and we'll just start off here from the Future of Freedom Foundation.org. Jason Hornberger wrote this, who is running for president of the United States under the Libertarian Party. You know me, I'm not crazy about parties. Always examine their content. And this one here says the roots of U.S. hatred toward Iran. As it reads, a question that naturally arises, but one that mainstream press never asks is, what is the reason of the deep-seated hatred that the U.S. national security state has toward Iran? No. The answer doesn't begin with the fact that the Iranian revolutionaries took diplomats hostage during the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which is what the mainstream press often asserts. The U.S. hatred for Iran stretches back even further than that. In fact, to answer the hatred that the Pentagon, the CIA, and the NSA have for Iran, it is actually necessary to go back to the founding of the United States. When the delegates met at the Constitutional Convention, it was for the purpose of modifying the Articles of Confederation, a type of governmental system under which Americans have been operating for 13 years. Under the Articles, the federal government's powers were so weak that it didn't even have the power to tax. That was the way our American ancestors wanted it. The last thing they wanted was a type of governmental system where the federal government wielded the same types of omnipotent powers that had been wielded by the government against which they had revolted in 1776. A limited government republic. Rather than simply modify the Articles of Confederation, however, the Constitutional Convention proposed different type of governmental system, one called a limited government republic. Under this governmental structure, the federal government would wield more powers, but they would be limited to those enumerated in the document itself. Americans were leery of the deal, concerned that federal officials, including democratically elected ones, would begin wielding and exercising despotic powers. They were assured that that couldn't happen because the powers enumerated in the Constitution were few and limited and didn't include dictatorial powers. To emphasize their concern, however, Americans demanded the enactment of the Bill of Rights, which expressly restricted the ability of U.S. officials to exercise despotic powers. Under America's founding governmental system of a limited government republic, there was no Pentagon, military-industrial complex, foreign military bases, CIA, NSA, coups, foreign aid, alliances with dictatorial regimes, or regime change invasions and occupations. In fact, if Americans had been told, as the Constitution was going to bring into existence those things, they would have summarily rejected the deal and continue operating under the Articles. A limited government republic was a governmental system under which American people operated for more than a century. Yes, there was a basic army whose primary purpose was to wage war against Native Americans, but its size was extremely limited. Why did Americans oppose standing armies? The term they used for big permanent military intelligence establishments, because they were convinced that standing armies inevitably led to the destruction of the liberty and well-being of the citizenry. I hope all you neocon sympathizers are comprehending this. Notwithstanding slavery, the Mexican War, and the Civil War, the American people experienced more than 100 years of relative liberty, peace, and prosperity, in large part because there was no big military intelligence establishment that was bankrupting the nation through ever-increasing spending, taxes, and monetary debasement. The conversion to a national security state. The situation changed after World War II, when America's federal governmental system was converted from a limited government republic to a national security state. A type of governmental system that is inherent to totalitarian regimes. That's how Americans got the Pentagon, the military-industrial complex, the CIA, the NSA, agencies with vast, omnipotent, dark side powers that would end up changing the nature of American society. The rationale of the conversion was the threat that Soviet Union and godless communism supposedly posed to the United States. U.S. officials maintained that although that Nazi threat was now over, the American people could rest because they now faced a danger, that was supposedly even bigger than Nazi Germany. Ironically, the Soviet Union had been a partner and ally of the United States in the Great War against Nazi Germany. Since the Soviet Union and the communists wielded omnipotent powers and did not have to concern themselves with constitutional restraints, U.S. officials maintained that the only way the United States could prevail in this new Cold War was to adapt the same type of governmental structure as the Soviet Union, as the Soviets. One that consisted of a vast military intelligence establishment with omnipotent dark side powers, including the power to conduct state-sponsored assassinations without judicial interference. The CIA's coup in Iran. In 1953, the CIA brought some of its new powers to bear. The democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran, a man named Mohammad Mossadegh, nationalized British oil interests in the country. The British lacked the ability to get their oil fields back, so they enlisted the assistance of the CIA. To help the British get their oil interests back, the CIA presented its plan for a regime change to President Truman, who rejected it. Interesting. After President Eisenhower assumed office, however, he approved the plan based on the CIA's rationale that Mossadegh was leaning toward communism and the Soviet Union, and therefore posed a threat to U.S. national security. The principal term in lexicon of a national security state form of governmental structure. It's called Operation Ajax, to be exact. I will continue on. Exercising some of its new omnipotent dark side powers, the CIA orchestrated a coup that ended up destroying Iran's experiment with democracy. The coup removed Mossadegh from power and replaced him with the Shah of Iran, one of the most vicious and brutal dictators in the world. To ensure that the unelected Shah would remain in power for the rest of his life, the CIA helped him to establish and train an internal police force called the Savak, which specialized in the arts of indefinite detention, torture, oppression, and state-sponsored terrorism. None of the tyranny mattered to the Pentagon and the CIA. However, what mattered to them that the Shah was a friend of the United States, one who would do the bidding on the U.S. government in the United Nations and in other international affairs. The puppet. The Iranian Revolution. In 1979, the Iranian people had enough of the U.S.-installed, U.S.-trained, and U.S.-supported tyranny, terror, and oppression. That's when they revolted against the Shah. Unfortunately, however, the Iranian people were unable to restore the democratically elected system that the CIA had destroyed in 1953. The Iranian people ended up with a theocratic dictatorship that proved just as tyrannical as the Shah. The CIA and the Pentagon have never forgiven the Iranian people for what they did. The Shah was our man in Iran. As far as the U.S. national security establishment was concerned, the Iranian people had no legitimate authority to remove him from office. Thus, ever since the Iranian Revolution, the CIA and the Pentagon have been dead set on regime change, never giving up their hope of reinstalling another Shah into power in Iran, one that would be a friend of the U.S. government. In fact, soon after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, U.S. officials began supporting Iranian dictator Saddam Hussein in a war that he initiated against Iran. That war ended up lasting several years, killing an untold number of Iranian people with the full support of the Pentagon and the CIA. Ironically, the U.S. national security establishment would ending up turning against their partner and ally Saddam Hussein and targeting him for regime change, which would ultimately lead to perpetual death, destruction, violence, and mayhem in that country. Today, some 67 years after the CIA's coup in Iran, and some 41 years after the Iranian Revolution, the hatred that the CIA and the Pentagon bear for the Iranian people and the obsession for regime change got unabated, as reflected by the recent exercise of one of the dark side powers that came with the federal government's conversion to a national security state, the power to conduct state-sponsored assassinations against people, both foreign and domestic, with ostensibility, pose a threat to national security. The solution: the worst mistake Americans have ever made was to permit the federal government to be converted into a national security state. The best thing Americans can ever do, is to restore a limited government republic to our land as our American ancestors understood so well. A free, peaceful, prosperous, and harmonious nation cannot exist under a national security state form of governmental structure, one where government officials wield, exercise totalitarian, sordid, dark side powers. He's right. You have to always see things a lot more than what it is. And one of the areas we have to look at is foreign policies on this matter. It's been going on for a long time, my friends. And this is why I see people, even my friends on Facebook, F these people, ba 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 ba. And I hear people, oh yeah, they got revenge, we gotta get them, and this and that. I'm like, folks, you're not paying attention. Study your history before jumping to conclusions. I always say, I support a constitutional republic, not an empire. Bring all of our brothers and sisters home. Get rid of all the bases around the world. And you know what? Don't even have the people keep it. Just destroy it. It'll be theirs. Like even Guantanamo Bay. Rip it to shreds before giving it back. This was dangerous. Even since the Spanish-American War, the United States became a bigger empire. And even the authors from both Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers warned us about it. All you gotta do is do a little reading, friends. Now in due time, what's going on now? Everyone's gonna suffer. People that are serving from both sides inherited this disaster. We all have to see things a lot broader than what it is. So think for yourselves, do your homework, and share us to people you know. So this one here came out yesterday, and this is from AmericanGrit.com, and actually one of my a good friend of mine, shared this, and he served in the Marines during Desert Storm. Just educate yourselves. This says here, long overdue response to Iran. It is by Faisal Sipra. As it reads here, our recent actions involving Iran are not only correct, but long overdue. The mainstream media, and unfortunately many in our own government, have consistently tried to downplay the danger Iran poses to the United States and its interest. The assault on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad on New Year's Eve 2019 was not a protest. It was an international intentional attack with extreme prejudice. The meeting of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani at Baghdad airport was nothing short of deliberate, with intention to direct more attacks on Americans in Iraq and to disrupt Iraq's stability. Many unfortunate don't know the history of our issues with Iran, nor the very dangerous yet indirect tactics Iran employs. And it's cute because he talked about the Iran's Islamic Revolution in the 1980s. In 1979, Iran went through its Islamic Revolution, which overthrew its ruler, the Shah. The Shah was widely criticized for his excesses and abuses of power, allowing the religious leaders of Iran, namely Ayatollah Khomeini, to rally Iranians against the Shah and remove him from power. The Shah was a strong ally to the United States and a key figure in countering communism. As he entered exile, received tremendous support from the U.S. and its allies. In late October 1979, President Jimmy Carter, against the advice of key cabinet members, allowed the Shah to enter the United States for medical treatment in New York City. This infuriated the new Islamic regime in Iran, and on November 4, 1979, Iranian protesters seized control of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. Iran took 52 American hostages. Despite those intense negotiations, military posturing, and ultimately a failed rescue attempt called Operation Eagle Claw, the hostages will remain in capacity for 444 days. I do remember that. It was a failed mission. It was the helicopters. And it says here, the November 4th, taking of hostages was after several kidnapping attempts over the past several months, as well as an Iranian-sponsored assassination of the U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan. Authorities in Iran quickly rallied to support the hostage takers. On January 29, 1980, on the final hours of the Carter's administration, the hostages were released. January 29th? I believe it was 81. Okay, following the Carter administration, the hostages were released, but this was only the beginning of Iran's belligerence and terrorism. By 1983, Lebanon was in a civil war, in a war that also drew the Syrians and Israelis. At the center of the violence in Lebanon, and continues to be Hezbollah, the Party of God, which is both a political and paramilitary organization backed by Iran. There's even claims that Hezbollah was started by Israel. Just check it out. So I say he's going to do a little homework here. But I'll proceed. When the United States and France entered Lebanon as part of a multinational peacekeeping force, along with other nations, Iran leveraged Hezbollah to wage acts of violent terrorism against the peacekeepers. The bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut in April 1983 and the murder of 241 U.S. Marines and almost 60 French paratroopers on October 23, 1983, were all the work of Iranian-backed Hezbollah. Throughout the 1980s, Iran sponsored hijackings, kidnappings, and murder of Americans across Europe and the Middle East. Here's a full depth count on here. You can look at it yourself about Beirut and Grenada. Interesting there. I'm going to have to look at that later on, but I'll continue on. The tanker war of the late 1980s was another episode of Iran's menacing. Iran conducted a campaign of violence, extortion, and intimidation against its Arabian Gulf neighbors. That resulted in a major expansion of U.S. naval presence in the region, were reflagging of tankers to ensure as a protection by the U.S. Looked like it happened with the Barbary pirate days. As I proceed here, Iran slips into obscurity. In 1990, Iran was exhausted and bloodied from almost a decade of war with Iraq, and with Iraq's invasion of Kuwait on August 2, 1990, the U.S. and its allies were no longer focused on Iran, but now Iraq. Through the 1990s, and even through the global war on terrorism of the 2000s, Iran wasn't even a relevant player. But make no mistake, Iran took full advantage of this obscurity and the chaos happening around it in Iraq, Afghanistan, and usual areas of meddling such as Lebanon. During the time, Iran was continuing to develop a nuclear weapons program and truthfully never stopped menacing the full flow of trade in the Gulf region. In a recent interview with retired U.S. MC Brigadier General Joseph Medina, it was clearly stated that in the early to mid-2000s, Iran continued to be a problem for maritime forces. Medina had led an expeditionary strike group in the region during that time. Iran also made an attempt to meddle with Iraq's rebuilding by supporting Shiite insurgencies in the predominantly Shiite areas of Basra and Najaf. And there's a link for that as well. You can check it out. Outside of military operations, nuclear developments, and support for its proxies against Hezbollah, Iran was taking yet another full step into the absurd between 2005 to 2013. Iran was led by Mohammed Ahmadinejad, who was determined to get Iran back on the radar for all the wrong reasons. Ahmadinejad loved using the media to promote his political stunts, namely his annual Holocaust denial, even that drew anti-Semites around the world. Iran also entered an odd alliance with Venezuela's Hugo Chavez, which, despite their best efforts, ended up being a bad episode of Dumb and Dumber. In January 2016, Iran tried to play games by seizing U.S. naval patrols, taking U.S. sailors prisoner, and were not met with any consequence. This, of course, was exploited by Iran to garner support and intimidate other Gulf states. Not to mention the famous nuclear deal and the releasing of financial assets in 2015. And to be very frank, my friends, the Iran nuclear deal was never been approved by the Senate or Congress as a whole. So officially, it's unconstitutional. And all you gotta do is look it up. Not playing anymore. Iran has been dealt some hard lessons recently that the United States simply is not playing their game anymore. The past summer, Iran attempted to give new life to the tanker war of the 1980s, threatening movement through the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy, along with key players in the region, such as the United Arab Emirates, or UAE, sent a clear message to Iran as who is ruling the waves. Then, of course, we have the Iranian instigated and supported assault on the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad on December 31st, 2019. No doubt the Iranians were banking on a response such as Mogadishu in 1993 and, of course, 2012 in Benghazi. Interesting claim about the thing in Benghazi because there was a lot of interesting files that was released by Judicial Watch in reference to that horrific event. And we can look at everything as blowback, including that one as well. So I'll proceed. The intermediate response by 100 members of the 2nd Battalion, 7 Marines assigned to the Special Purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force, supported by significant air assets, put an immediate stop to the assault on our embassy and secure it in short order. The operation by Marines did not follow on forces from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division should send a loud message that we are ready in every situation and placed to do what needs to be done in the name of American security. Don't believe the hype. Mainstream media and many in Congress and of course pop culture would like us to believe we are provoking war with Iran. The airstrikes killed top Iranian military leaders, including General Qasem Soleimani, who oversaw organizing and leading Iranian-sponsored operations outside of Iran against the U.S. and its allies. His death was a necessary step in disrupting Iran's operations outside of Iran. Therefore, avoiding war, Iran has played games with us for a better part of 40 years, and always leaned on the fears of retaliation to them and the media hype that we are seeking war. What we are doing is responding accordingly to protect American personnel and property. This is what the world needs to see from us, and the message Iran needs to receive, plain and simple. Of course, you have opinions on this. insightful and all that. Yeah, and I'm not, criticizing the author. He is putting his side in there as well. But the whole thing is, even the Iranian government, they're not a bunch of saints either. So what we're seeing here is a big cloak and dagger extravaganza already has imploded. But when you study all the patterns, there's a phrase called cause and effect. That's how you gotta look at things geopolitically. How this happened, and now the infighting, all these claims of one another. You even hear guys like Ray McGovern say they don't even haven't had a nuclear program or make the bomb. So this is why we gotta look at things a lot more broader, thoroughly, and being observant. And even a person like myself, I do agree with George Washington. We should never be involved with foreign entanglements. And General Smedley Butler said it the best. And I'm going to tell you right here. I'm just going to do a little looking here. Hold on. Oops. Right there. Boom. He made a statement. Major Smedley Butler. There are only two things we should fight for. One is defense of our homes, and the other is the Bill of Rights. For any other reason, is simply a racket. That's Major General Smedley Butler, United States Marine Corps. So all my brothers that serve in the Marines should check him out. Read his book, War is a Racket. A lot of merit, folks. That's what we should be fighting for. Only two reasons. Plain and simple. So, what are your thoughts? You can share it with me. I'd like to hear your intake from all sides. And use it with decorum. And that will be it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or say something that's interesting, whatever you do, please address it with finesse. Plus, I will leave these footnotes on here on this episode on my Spreaker page. And plus, that will include the 1953 Coup files that's been declassified. That'll be under National Security Archive. So, folks, please, I recommend everyone to see it and share it with everyone you know. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.